Hello and welcome to the Mexican E-Prix E-Notes with me, Jack Giordmaina. What another thrilling race we had in Mexico, and this time it wasn't the shunts that caused the main talking points, it was just good old-fashioned racing, and with some uncharacteristic errors by drivers who you wouldn't think would make these type of errors. So an amazing race, but the race was won in a dominant fashion by Mitch Evans. So I suppose we should start with Jaguar Racing and see how their race went. So obviously Evans won the race after somewhat of an aggressive move on Andre Lotterer into turn 1, but from then on he was just out of sight. Evans said the team worked really hard to eliminate the errors from Santiago, a race where he was also leading but he didn't win because they just didn't really have the pace. But as he said, he was delighted to win the race and it felt like deja vu from Rome because he also had to pass Andre Lotterer on track to win in Rome, which he did in Mexico. James Calado, though, it was a difficult race. He did manage to finish in the points, but then was later disqualified for using too much energy. So, yet again, still then struggling to pick up his first points in the season. But for Calado, he just needs to work on qualifying. I think Dario Franchitti also said it in commentary. His qualifying performances are letting him down. In the race, he's able to actually make up a few positions, but it's just not working out for him. And obviously, with Evans doing as well as he's doing, and obviously Evans has got the experience. But when you've got the teammate like James Calado, who is a good driver but is new to the series, and when your teammate is dominating the way he is, it's not a good reflection on him. So, which is such a shame because he is a good driver, but he needs to start picking up some speed effectively into the next race in Marrakesh. So, DS Techeetah. The team's champions came home in 2nd and 4th with Da Costa 2nd and Vern in 4th. The drivers were fairly happy after the race, but you can just tell by Vern's demeanour in his interviews that he just hasn't got on top of the car yet and he's not really that happy, although the result in Mexico for the team was a good one. Obviously, he's been struggling with the brakes, and Da Costa, on the other hand, has been flying. He could have, if he had the pace and if qualifying was going better for Da Costa, he could have maybe have won the last two races. He probably could have. He had the pace probably to win or match Evans at least in Mexico. He definitely had the pace to win in Santiago. Just a bit of a miscalculation. But again, with Da Costa, it seems qualifying is the issue, and he's just got to put that right. And Da Costa can be a serious title contender because that DS Cheetah car, okay, maybe it looked not as quick in race trim in Mexico, but overall, I think that package is still very good, and Da Costa is getting the best out of that car. But, the interesting thing with the team champions there is that they were squabbling during that race. Like, it didn't make sense. Da Costa had more energy than Vern, but they did a swap. They were in 4th and 5th at the time, and they were right behind Sebastian Buemi, and they lost about 2, nearly 3 seconds for squabbling over track position. And then a lap later, after Vern passed Da Costa then passed Vern. So it just didn't make much sense. So in all that time, they could have just let Da Costa go, attack Buemi, and then get past and maybe got to Bird a bit closer and maybe put on a small attack towards Evans towards the end of the race, but that obviously didn't come to fruition. So, yeah, odd strategy move. I think, Mark Preston said, team principal, said after the race, they still got things to work on. So maybe is that strategy and how they're just managing these two drivers, because Da Costa's on top of Vern. Normally, I think last season Vern was on top of Lotterer more and it was probably easier to manage, but at this precise moment Da Costa is on form and maybe they're just struggling managing two really fantastic drivers who are battling for this championship. So then Nissan, Buemi picked up his first points of the season in 3rd as Roland came home in 7th. Buemi said his car has good pace, but it's just not as quick as some of the other cars around him, which sort of made sense because his race did sort of stagnate. He fell out of the podium contention, but then with Bird obviously crashing out, which we'll get onto in a minute, he managed to promote himself back to 3rd. So he did stay in a race of his own and was just plodding along, got overtaken by quicker cars and so forth. But again, they managed to get some good points with Roland obviously in 7th, so not a bad day for Nissan after a struggling start to the season for them. In Virgin Racing, I have to move on to them. They could have been such a strong double points finish. Obviously, Bird was in P2, as I just mentioned, and Robin Franz was in P4, but Franz was completely wiped out by the freeze in the race as he was no fault of his own at turn 1, so that ruined his race. And Sam Bird, Mr. Consistent, an unforced error at turn 3, running wide onto the marbles and hitting the wall from P2 with a couple of laps to go. Obviously, the drivers were gutted after the race, but the only good thing for them is that Marrakesh is in 2 weeks' time and they can try and claw some points back. But that could have been a really strong double points finish for Virgin, and it's amazing, this sport sometimes in this series, that it can be so good to you. It can, things can go your way, but when things you're going right for you, it can just be taken away through no fault of your own. And that was clearly the case for Robin Frijns, more especially than Bird, in Mexico. So gutting for them. But moving on to Audi, obviously, who provide the powertrain for Virgin. They had a great race. De Grassi coming from 15th to finish in 6th. Again, De Grassi doing things that you have to come to expect from now, because he's constantly now coming through the field to get into great finishing positions, and he's probably one of the best in the field from coming from the back to the front. And you have to also give your hats off to Daniel Abt. He was in hospital after his shun in FP1. He didn't finish the race, but he was definitely in the mix. He spun at turn 1. But wow, to not really have much track time compared to everyone else, missed qualifying, missed FP2, come in for the race. He did an admirable job. Shame he didn't finish, but I still think it was a good job from Daniel Abt. A bit of a shame about, the crash and obviously going to hospital, and it's great that, he was cleared and ready to race. So, BMW, another great comeback drive from Sims to go from 16th to 5th. BMW struggled in qualifying as both Sims and Gunther were down the order. Gunther struggled in the race and spun at turn 1, which cost him points, and he finished 11th. But still, they lead the team's championships despite obviously their poor qualifying performance. So that's still something good to take away as they go into Marrakesh. Mahindra, the race went to plan. Obviously, they had their penalties for the gearbox, and they managed to serve them before the first safety car came out, so that put them straight back into contention. And, it worked out. Verline and D'Ambrosio, they managed to fight their way through the field, and they came home in 9th and 10th, so they managed to get some points, which I suppose at the beginning of the day, they weren't expecting to get points. So, a good show from them. Venturi, Masha crashed early on, and he just put his hands up and he said it was his fault. He just, got it wrong in the turn 1, crashed. Mortara finished 9th, and he said that the team really didn't have the pace today, which, considering they've got the Mercedes powertrain, they've been able to be quite competitive so far this season. So it was really the first time this season that they really didn't have the pace. Porsche, I think it's just a race that what could have been, because Lotterer on pole. He got off the line quite well. Yes, he was pushed out by Mitch Evans, but it just got from worse because obviously he dropped down to about 4th. Did manage to get himself back up to 3rd, but then, he fell down again as Bird went past him, then Frijns, and then De Vries. And then as he was trying to get back through, he tapped De Vries, which broke his front wing, very similar to what happened to Vern. It was smoking, it was sparking, and he pitted for a new front wing, and they just decided no point in racing on. So a race that could have given so much potential for Porsche with their first ever pole position went down the drain. Neil Yarni, he had another tough race, and he was the last classified finisher, so he's really struggling to get to grips with the series and the car. So not worrying times for Porsche, but definitely good signs from Andre Lotterer. Maybe some start worrying signs coming in now for Neil Yarni. Dragon, Muller caused the first safety car trying to pass De Vries. He said he got it all wrong, and the wall just bit him. He was just there, tried to go around the outside, probably ran a bit out wide, wasn't much grip, straight into the wall. Hartley came home in 12th, so another tough race for him, and again another race where Dragon just don't pick up any points. Mercedes, so also another bad day for them. They had De Vries it was a fan boost software issue, so very similar to what Daniel Abt had, where he was racing with Da Costa at the time, and they were on the front straight, and they both put in their fan boost Da Costa try and pass De Vries to defend the position, but then as De Vries went to brake, completely locked up, didn't even slow down, he just went straight into the wall. Very similar situation to Daniel Abt. So a shame for him, because obviously he knocked out Robin Frijns in that situation. Van Dorn, he was in 5th, and he looked like he was going to carry on, but he missed it consistent in the championship because he was leading the Drivers' Championship beforehand. But an unforced error on their attack by Sims, again very similar to Sam Bird, went wide at turn 3 and then slid off, hit the outside barrier, race over, race done. and he didn't score any points. So a really difficult race for Mercedes after such a good start to the season. And again, even with what's been going on with De Vries and Van Dorn in the race, they were set to get more points. So it has been a good start to the season, but I suppose the series bit them on Saturday in the race. And then there you go, it's another race gone by. And then finally, Neo obviously struggled. Turvey was 13th. Ma was out of the race after he hit the wall, so another bad day for them. Obviously, Turvey just some sort of battery shutdown, management system error, which caused his car to shut down after the final corner, going into qualifying. So that is pretty much it for the E-Notes episode. It was a great race from Mexico, absolutely stunning race. Kept you on the edge of seats. Did have a few lull periods, but I think it was good to have some lull periods. But you always know in Formula E that if you have a lull period, you just have to wait a couple of laps, because then it will get juicy again. So we've only got 2 weeks now to wait until the next race in Marrakesh. So please remember, if you're really enjoying the content, to like and subscribe, and I will see you very soon.